Thank you for waiting. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, to a very special NerdTube event. Tonight, we are joined by Mr. Jonathan Lane of Fan Film Factor. He is here with us to discuss his fan film, An Absent Friend, which we are going to watch, react to live, and then have a special interview with him afterwards. Before we get to the film, which has at present 44,000 views already, an impressive number. How are my fellow co-hosts, Mr. Lane? How are you this evening?
I'm doing just great. I'm here in Los Angeles, so while Zam has seen the sunset for today, I've got a nice 75-degree day out here.
Wonderful. Below him is Cousin Cheeto. How are you, sir?
Hey,
Excellent. Two thumbs of approval. And to the left of him is Zam. How are you this evening, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Having some technical issue, which is why I'm using my backup microphone, and I apologize for the audio quality.
Cheeto said he sounds like he's in a can, so it's the Zam in a can.
Should change your name down there, mate. Sorry you're having the issues, but thanks for sticking with us.
You're welcome.
Okay. So, the man in the chair, do you want to throw up the film?
Oh, I can. Maybe.
Throw out the film.
There it is. All right, you guys ready to get started?
Yeah.
Let's do it, man. Do it.
Do it. Do it now.
You did
Do
it
it
all
now.
Every effort was made in the creation of this project to comply with CBF. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, I miss them. I love them. In 2293, Captain James T. Kirk was lost in the hull breach caused by the mysterious spatial anomaly. This final action, however, allowed the USS Enterprise B to escape on board. Blah 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 blah. Things go too fast.
James T. Kirk died as he lived. A hero.
Written by Jonathan Lane. I don't know who that schmuck is.
I was a bit upset about seeing a bottle of whiskey floating in space and nobody's going to drink it, but then I realized
It's Southern Comfort.
For the beginning of Generations. And thank you to my friend Mojo for creating this opening sequence animation, because I couldn't do it. And
it's awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Although I did the shower.
Damn it.
Hey!
Get me another one.
Not if you throw it against my bar again. Come on, Doc. Don't make me kick you out of here. You're one of my best customers.
Just get me another bourbon.
I think you've had enough for one night, Doc.
Damn it, Barkeep.
I'll decide.
I'm an
when I've had
alcoholic.
enough, damn it.
Not
I
a
can
sochist.
still feel. I still hurt. I haven't had enough until I stop hurting. Understand? Now bring me another goddamn bottle.
Dr. McCoy, I believe the bartender is correct in his assessment. Perhaps you should consider allowing your liver an opportunity to recuperate.
Where the hell did you come from?
Vulcan.
I know that, you green-blooded hobgoblin.
The pointed ears are always my first clue.
I meant, Doctor, that I just returned from visiting my home planet. I cut short my intended sabbatical when I heard of the incident.
The incident? Jim's dead. You cold, emotionless bastard. He was your best friend. Probably the closest thing you ever had to a brother. And he's dead. Dead. How can you not feel anything?
I mourn his passing, Doctor.
Poppycock. Under all that logical Vulcan statue-like pretense, you must feel something. You must hurt, Spock. Don't you hurt?
Not in the way humans do.
Bull. You're half human, even if you never admit it. And that human half just lost its anchor to emotion. The only thing that kept you connected to your human heritage, that forced you to feel something, anything, is gone. Now you really have lost your soul.
Man, McCoy's
Doctor,
good.
I believe that the alcohol has impaired your better judgment. Perhaps it would be best to discontinue this line of discussion.
Hit a nerve, did I? Ha! That'll be the day. With Jim gone, you'll freeze up like Rura Pente. He tried to show you how to be human.
Rura Pente.
Now he's dead.
And I don't think you'll ever learn the lesson he was trying to teach you.
Dr. McCoy.
All right, all right. Secure from red alert, Spock. Well, I guess I can't avoid you. Have a seat. You may as well join me.
Thank you, Dr. McCoy. I would enjoy that.
So
The sad
formal.
truth is, I envy you. I wish I could just turn off my feelings like a damn light switch. Snap my fingers and poof, no more pain. James T. Kirk is dead. The universe moves on. I move on. It would be so simple.
Purging emotion is not simple, Dr. McCoy. It never has been. And Jim's loss is indeed difficult.
Well, at least you're not a complete frozen wasteland then. Thank God for small miracles. So when did you get back from Vulcan?
4.32 hours ago. After checking in with Starfleet Command, I beamed to the Enterprise to pay my respects to Captain Harriman.
The Enterprise? That's not the blasted Enterprise.
Yes, it is.
It's the Excelsior with water wings.
The recent modifications to the basic Excelsior design make the new subclass even more well-equipped to explore the...
Oh, spare me the engineering lecture. I'm a doctor, not a shipbuilder.
My apologies.
Speaking of engineers, did you have a chance to see Scotty yet?
He was not on board the Enterprise, and after returning to the surface, I immediately endeavored to find you. This is the 7th drinking establishment you visited in the last 16 hours.
More like the 9th.
Indeed. Tracking you down was not a simple matter.
I wasn't exactly looking to advertise my whereabouts.
That much is certain. Nevertheless, I felt it appropriate to seek your presence. We were, after all, a triumvirate of sorts.
The Three Musketeers? Yeah, that was us.
More precisely, I would conjecture
I love the use of
id,
the
ego and superego.
I love the use of the
to put
animated
it in
series.
psychological
there.
terms.
That's an interesting look at it, Spock. I'm assuming you'd be the superego. Logical, rational, holding back the emotions.
And in Freudian psychology, the id is all about feeling and acting on instinct rather than thinking it through. And then the ego listens to both sides and decides on the best course of action. Yeah, I guess that was you, me, and Jim. Although he did have a strong id himself. Put a pretty girl in the room and you could see his id jump right out of his pants.
Doctor,
Oh,
God.
Sense of
my.
humor, Spock. You need to remember the captain for who he really was. Not some paragon on a pedestal. Jim Kirk had his flaws, his weaknesses. He also had his strengths. He laughed. He cried. He got scared. He got angry. He felt things. He was human with a capital H.
he was an impressive man, a masterful starship commander, and a good friend.
I'll drink to that. Or I would. If only someone would bring me another goddamn bourbon. You hear me over there?
I suspect, Doctor, that the bartender has developed a selective deafness when it comes to your specific attempts to acquire additional liquid refreshment.
Oh, yeah? Well, screw him. Last time I'll ever come here. You hear that, you lazy, good-for-nothing
Really, Doctor, I believe he has only your best interests at heart, or at least the best interests when it comes to your health.
Oh, yeah? Well, I'm the physician. He's the bartender. When the hell did we switch jobs?
Man, it was a lot more fun getting drunk with Scotty.
There is Captain Scott.
Who knows? I started drinking with him 6 or 7 bars ago. Chekhov, too. Did you know they were both on the Enterprise with Jim when it happened?
Yes, I read the full report while on the shuttle traveling back from Vulcan.
Of course you did. They both blame themselves, you know. Either of them could have gone down to engineering
Man,
and
those
done
are some frowns.
whatever it was he did.
He
Yeah.
adjusted the primary deflector dish to emit a resonance burst to simulate the discharge of an antimatter blast to disrupt the gravimetric field that was holding the Enterprise within the temporal distortion.
Oh yeah.
That.
That.
Anyway,
Bones
Scotty
is
and
all of
Chekhov
us.
both figured they could have done that too. In fact, there were 600 people on that ship, and any of them could have done it. Why the hell did it have to be one of the most decorated officers in Starfleet history to sacrifice his life?
The crew complement at the time was minimal, Doctor. Only 233, including 47 refugees from the rescued Elorian transport vessel and 8 civilian representatives of the news media, none of whom would have been familiar enough with Starfleet systems to have made the deflector adjustment. So in actuality, the pool of qualified personnel was only 178.
Still, why did it have to be Jim? Why couldn't Harriman have done it?
or ordered someone else to do it? Because Captain Kirk has always been the hero, Doctor.
That doesn't sound like a very Vulcan observation.
Nevertheless, it is the truth. You and I knew James Kirk well enough to know that he would never allow another member of his crew to face peril if there were a way he could take on the risk himself.
But it wasn't Jim's crew, damn it. It was Harriman's.
I read in the Enterprise's logs that Captain Harriman did indeed intend to be the one to go to engineering, and he even offered the command chair to Captain Kirk before heading for the turbolift.
But Jim would have none of that, of course.
Of course.
Goddamn Boy Scout.
Doctor, James T. Kirk was many things in his life, but I do not believe he was ever a Boy Scout.
You know what I mean.
Yes. Yes, I do.
You know, Scotty doesn't think he's really dead. He said something about the distortion causing a temporal flux or some such. He said that Jim might have just winked out of the space-time continuum like he did when we got trapped by those Tholians while trying to rescue the Defiant.
That was a very different phenomenon, Doctor, with extremely dissimilar parameters.
Most notably that, with the Tholians, Jim was wearing a spacesuit.
That would be one parameter, yes.
Even so, Scotty says he expects that Jim will be back amongst the living in no time.
That is highly illogical.
You don't believe it's possible? Why? You did it.
Did what, Doctor?
Came back from the dead. In fact, most of us did. I did on that crazy planet where we had shore leave and anything we imagined appeared. As I recall, I got speared through the chest by some medieval knight of all things. Chekhov was dead in that Melkoshian Wild West simulation, although that was all in our imaginations. But heck, even Scotty came back from the dead once. After that Nomad probe killed him. I examined Scotty thoroughly, and he was as dead as you can get. But somehow Nomad brought him back to life. Maybe now it's Jim's turn.
While I would like nothing better than to accept the wishful theory of Captain Scott, I must point out that it is highly improbable that anyone could survive in the vacuum of space unprotected. Even were this distortion to have somehow transported Jim elsewhere in space-time, which is itself highly unlikely, the odds that such an anomaly could have reached him prior to suffering fatal decompression are approximately 13,476,544,679 to 1.
And Kirk is the one, baby.
I bet you don't ever really calculate those odds, and instead you just make them up.
I could review the computations with you if you would like, Doctor. It's actually based on rather elementary statistical theory that...
Oh, God, no. The last thing I need is a computer algorithm killing my buzz, which you've already managed to do anyway.
That was not my intention.
Yeah, I'll just bet it wasn't. I remember once, a long time ago, I told Jim that space was disease and danger, wrapped in darkness and silence. And that's how he died. In darkness and silence.
He did tell us once that he always knew he would die alone.
In cabin.
Well, you sure can't be more alone than floating in space. Your blood boiling in 13 seconds. At least he went quickly. In fact, with any luck, the blast that ripped a hole in the hull killed him instantly.
I would not consider any death to be lucky, Doctor.
Then maybe I should have said merciful instead. I remember my own father deteriorated slowly, his organs letting go of life one small bit at a time until all he wanted was just to die. But his body wouldn't let him. Compared to that, even an agonizing death over the course of 13 seconds in the vacuum of space would seem lucky. I mean merciful.
The end result is the same, however.
It is for all of us, Spock. It is for all of us. I don't know if Sulu told you, but he's holding a gathering of the old crew at his home in Napa tomorrow.
I was informed of it by his daughter when I visited the Enterprise.
Demora? My God, I haven't seen her since she was the size of an Arcturian meadowcat. That was 12 years ago when Sulu got command of the Excelsior. Is she old enough to be in Starfleet now?
An ensign and chief helm officer of the Enterprise.
Oh, Lord, do I feel old. But good for her. I can't imagine an Enterprise without a Sulu to steer her. So, will you be coming to the wake? I know Christine would love to see you.
I am considering it.
Well, I hope you do decide to show up.
It wouldn't seem right without you there, Spock. It wouldn't seem whole. You, me, Scotty, Sulu, Chekhov, Uhura, Chapel. Heck, I heard that Kyle, Leslie, Rand, and even Riley are planning to show up. Maybe even Savick. It'll be like old times. A reunion with only one person missing, one absent friend. Damn it. I will not cry. Not in front of you.
Doctor, it is all right.
No, it isn't. Blast it. I should have died first. I'm older than he was. Hell, with the way I drink, I should have been dead years ago. Damn medical advances keeping us all alive way too long. But not Jim.
Funny from the guy coming
He had to go and die, saving hundreds of people.
live in TNG
232,
time.
to be precise.
That was really funny, Spock. I think the Federation needs more Vulcan comedians. Have you ever thought of changing professions?
I have never considered a career in comedy. No.
Well,
You'd
maybe
be good at it.
Spock. I'm serious.
That I should become a comedian?
No, but that you should try to develop a sense of humor.
I do possess an understanding of and appreciation for comedy, Doctor.
Not as much as you could, Spock. There's nothing logical about comedy. You don't understand it or appreciate it. You just experience it and embrace it. It's one of the things that I think Jim was trying to teach you all these years. Don't take yourself too seriously, Spock.
All right, Doc, I'm closing the place up for the night. Do you want me to call you a hover cab?
That's all right, sir. I can escort Dr. McCoy home.
Suit yourself. But wrap it up. I want to lock the front door in 5 minutes.
Certainly. Thank you for your patience.
Patience.
I know you
That's
war
the
heroes. Save
I'm
the
the one with
Federation.
patience. I'm the doctor. Get it?
I believe I do, Dr. McCoy. I just don't believe it was funny.
Well, if you'd get yourself a blasted sense of humor, you'd think it was hilarious.
Doctor, let me help you on with your coat.
I can manage, Spock, but I meant what I said. Don't let yourself get caught in the same old routines. Change the rules a little. Every so often, be a maverick. Use a little cowboy diplomacy.
Would you like for me to take you home, Doctor? I have a hover car across the street.
No, but thank you, Spock. My apartment is only a few blocks from here, and I think I'd like to walk off the last of this buzz that I have.
Very well.
But, Spock, I did, I suppose, appreciate the company.
You are welcome, Doctor.
Let's not forget him, Spock. Ever. Let's remember every little detail about that crazy son of a bitch. Every blemish, every foible, every perfect little imperfection that made him the best damn starship captain. And the best friend we could ever ask for.
I agree.
And don't turn your back on what he was trying to teach you, Spock. Break a few rules. Be a cowboy. Every once in a while.
Dr. McCoy, I shall consider it.
Okay.
All right. Those funny
So-
guys over at the Fan Film Factor.
Funny guys. It's me.
Guy. Sorry.
Fan
funny
Film
guy.
Factors. That's me, man.
Listen, we don't know how many personalities are in there, okay?
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait.
So,
So, what'd you think?
okay. So,
Loved it. I mean, I admit this is my second time watching it, and I had a much more of an appreciation for watching it the second time round. It was brilliant. I felt like I was just watching like a play. You know, like I could be in the theater watching this, just McCoy and Spock just having a drink and just being played out as some sort of art. I loved it. It was really good.
It was originally written as a stage play, and I never really wrote it with any intention to make it into a fan film. And this is back in 2010. Star Trek 2009 had just come out, and there was this beautiful comic book called Spock Reflections that had come out with the movie, and it was all about Spock. The framing sequence was Spock basically trying to get himself somewhere, and you didn't know until the last issue what he was doing or what he was, what his mission was. But nobody was supposed to know about it. And, while he's on all of these freighters and shuttles and everything, you see him reminiscing about his past and just sort of thinking about, his time growing up and serving under Pike, mission with Kirk. And we discover at the end that he's actually gone to Viridian 3 to get Kirk's body that he discovered from Starfleet Command or from whatever, that Kirk's body had been buried by Picard there, and that, Kirk hadn't died on the Excelsior. And his whole mission was to beam Kirk's body from Viridian 3 and beam it under the gravesite that had been created in Riverside, Iowa for James T. Kirk, basically bringing his friend's body home. And after reading this beautiful, beautiful comic book, I wrote this story because I realized that when Kirk died at the beginning of Star Trek Generations, not the end, that first death, we never really saw anybody more. And we saw Chekhov and Scotty, just sort of looking at the hole, the hole in the hole. And that was it. And I was like, there's got to be some significant moment, especially between Spock and McCoy. They've just lost their best friend. They've lost one of the corners of the telephone. And I ended up writing this script, and it was basically just, one of them's talking, then the other's talking, one of them's talking, the other's talking, and, there's no narrate, there's no descriptions of, anything. They're in a bar. And it was just one of those things where I think I wrote it in like less than a night. It was just, I was watching it in front of my face and just kind of typing what they were saying. And this sat on my computer for, decade and a half almost. I entered in a short story contest at one point, but, for the most part, I didn't do anything with it. And I thought during the pandemic, maybe I'd create a fan of it. I'd find somebody who could play Spock and somebody who could play Kirk, or sorry, I should say McCoy, and I just put them both on stools in the middle of like a black set, like they were just on stage. Didn't even have to be anything. But I couldn't figure out who would play Spock and McCoy because it really needed to sell that they were Spock and McCoy. I thought of maybe, Jens Dombeck as the German Spock, because he looks like Spock, but he doesn't sound like Spock because he's German. And would that be too distracting? And who would I get to play McCoy? And it didn't go anywhere. And then finally, it was last
those
May.
Voices, don't you? You want the original style voices as well.
When I discovered 11 Labs, we were out in Dallas with a person who had donated to my other fan film interlude, Ray Myers. We were staying at his house, and he was researching for his company AI stuff. And 11 Labs had this amazing voice synthesis algorithm that not only could deliver whatever you typed in if you gave it some voice samples, but it could act. It would take cues from what was in the dialogue that you typed into the box, and it would actually give you emotional deliveries. And I was thinking, wow, I could potentially use this. And I sampled some DeForest Kelley and I sampled some Leonard Nimoy from various sources. And I started creating this. And the bartender is completely AI. They're all AI, but he's like a completely original voice. And I was like, this could work. And that started a 2-month process of getting an audio version of everything. And I was going to just leave it as an audio file and do like an audio drama. But the problem is you could only, with 11 Labs, you could only do about 2 or 3 sentences at a time. If you did anything more than that, at least at the time, it would start to drift. Like McCoy would slowly start losing, like the algorithm would kind of like lose McCoy, and by the end of it, he sounded like Gollum. And so you really only had the ability to do like maybe 400 or 500 words at a time at most. So because of that, every AI generation is different, so sometimes I had to go through 20 or 30 or even 40 different takes just to get one that sounded enough like McCoy or enough like Spock. But when I put those together, they didn't always match. Sometimes it was like a little bit higher, a little lower, a little raspier, a little quicker, a little slower. And I did what I could in Adobe Audition to adjust the quality, but eventually the stuff still wasn't matching, and you had like 2 or 3 sentences of McCoy that sounded like this, and then 2 or 3 sentences that sounded like this, and it was very noticeable. And I thought to myself, if we animated this, we could cut the scene of McCoy to a different angle. And that way, maybe the ear would forgive what the eye was seeing as different. And that's the whole reason that this is animated as opposed to just an audio AI. So anyway, that's my little background. But Cheeto and Major Rage, what did you guys think?
I really enjoyed it. I find it just interesting how you finding out now that you used a limitation kind of to your advantage, really. You found a nice workaround for the limitations of 11 Labs and then, you know, tailored the product around it. And I feel like I hear that a lot in various different ways from a lot of the fan film community. Would you agree with that statement?
Talking
I
to
agree
me
with
or
that statement?
Jonathan?
Oh, Jonathan, sorry.
So what specific statement that you have to kind of massage
That-
11 Labs, or that you take limitations and you turn them into advantages?
That you take limitations and turn them into advantages in this business.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, obviously, I see a lot of fan films, and the thing about fan films is there are no rules, so you make up whatever rules you want to, except for the guidelines, of course. So I've talked to fan filmmakers where I would say, what happens when the actor doesn't give you the line reading that you want? And different fan filmmakers have different answers to this question. And some of them will work with them and do a whole bunch of different takes until they get it just the right way. And then others have said, they know their character, so whatever they give me is good. I'll take that because it's their choice of how they want to deliver the line. There is no wrong answer to this question, by the way. So, many times when you see, a line delivery or whatever, and it's like, I'm not sure they really nailed that. Well, it's very possible that the actor just didn't have the ability to do it better. And it's also the possibility that the director wanted to give the actor more freedom to do it the best way that they thought was possible. So in that way, you can kind of take your lemons and occasionally make lemonade, or occasionally just leave them as lemons. I think what I've noticed a lot with AI, which is being used more and more in fan films, especially to generate some voices, is I think there are a number of people who just take the first or second generation of the line output from 11 Labs or whatever they're using and say, okay, well, that's it. I've got my line. And I'm like, you know what? There was one line of McCoy's, I don't even remember what it was. I think I had 130 different takes before I got something I could use. It just was not coming out well. And what I discovered, by the way, sorry to interrupt, but what I discovered, by the way, is I could direct my AI actors. And the way that I did this, remember I told you that 11 Labs takes its cues from what's in the dialogue. Well, what if McCoy is saying something sarcastic, like, I wasn't exactly looking to advertise my whereabouts? How do you make that sound sarcastic? Well, you add into the beginning of it, I'm about to say something very sarcastic. And he actually says, I'm about to say something very sarcastic. And then he says the second line, and then you just chop out that first part. You don't need it. So there were a whole bunch of times where I said, I'm really angry right now, or, I think this is going to be funny. I want to say something, that's going to make you laugh. And I'm just put that in the beginning of it and then chop it out. And in that way, I was able to direct my actors. And I think if more fan filmmakers do this, Like, for example, there was a fan filmmaker recently that used AI to generate a distress call from a shuttlecraft. And the distress call was said in a very cheery way. It was almost like, the Heart of Gold spacecraft from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where, when the computer is always, just bright and cheery, good morning, everybody. And like, but, we're being fired upon, we need help. And like, you don't sound like you're really struggling. And I do it again and just, like put something like, I'm really scared right now in front of it, and just chop it off. And fortunately he did that. But I think that, as people go forward, because you don't pay a lot of money to do a whole bunch of different takes. I mean, I paid a lot of money, like I paid $99 a month for 2 months because I had to have a 15-minute script. So I was paying by the character, by the letter, the punctuation mark, the space, everything counted against me. But if you're only doing a few sentences with AI, then it's like $5 to do it. So you can try it a bunch of different times and just keep going until you get the one you like.
That's a impressive dedication to quality, and it shows in the product. Cheeto, what were your overall
They call it
impressions of the
obsessive
project?
compulsive disorder, by the way, just so you know. I'm obsessed. Sorry, go ahead.
So one of the things that I love about something like this is a fact that it is slice of life. Even though this is not a very, very joyous slice of life, it is still a slice of life. This is something that is just kind of like, the thing that we miss, the thing that we don't get to see in the grand scheme of production of things is, because I've always said in the past, I'm a Dragon Ball fan, as you can tell, and I know what good and bad slice of life is. And this is good slice of life. This is good character building slice of life. I really liked the way that, even with the writing and the directing definitely had to have something with it, because when you go with AI generated, I was kind of fearful. I'm like, oh, AI generated. I've dealt with AI before. I used AI actually in one of my my Wing Commander playlists. I actually had Secret Ops, and I actually did the exact same thing. I used AI voices and stuff like that to work these whole like communications and everything that were basically put out through email while this game was coming out. Like, it was coming out in segments, but in between, the creators of the game released emails and stuff. Well, what I did is I took all those scripts and I put them into an AI generator with different voices and different actors and stuff like that. And some of the performances did come out very flat. And I wish I would have known, what you were saying earlier is that, maybe try something. I don't remember what I used. I did not use 11 Studio or Studio
11 Labs.
Yeah, 11
Labs is the best. I will tell you something. And my friend Ray had actually been researching a lot of these. None of the other ones really act. And not only does 11 Labs act, but they have a slider bar. They have a bunch of different slider bars. They have like 3. But one of the slider bars is called stability. And if you give it a very high stability of like 100% or 90% or whatever, it keeps it very true to the original voice, but it's not very emotional. And if you take it down to like 40 or 50, then it will give you more emotion, but it moves the voice further away. I guess it has to. So I got takes where McCoy sounded like a woman. I got takes where McCoy sounded like the narrator from The Outer Limits. I got takes where he sounded British. I mean, it was just so weird. Spock, on the other hand, was almost always set to like 85 to 95. Very seldom did Spock drop below 80 unless I really needed him to sound like he was getting a little bit pissed off at something. And
do you still have those bloopers, by the way?
Do I still have the bloopers?
Yeah, like all these different sounding McCoys and so
yes,
on. I'm curious. I would love to hear them.
Yeah, if you go to fanfilmfactor.com, search for an absent friend, the first of the blogs actually has some samples of the rejected McCoys, only from one particular line. But I did a 3-part blog on this. The first part was on the audio generation. The second part was on the animation, which we haven't even talked about yet. And the third part was on the legal and ethical questions of this. And it was a fascinating 3-part blog series that I do heartily recommend people read, especially if people are thinking, well, gee whiz, you just broke the law by doing this. Like, no, I actually didn't. In fact, California specifically has an exemption if you use the likeness, either physical appearance or voice likeness of a deceased person. They have exceptions if it's a specific work of art, literature, photography, or film, a bunch of other stuff that basically negates any liability. Now, is this going to stay around for the next year or two? No. The legislature of California is working on laws to update, because this law is from 1988. And the U.S. Congress is working on, the Senate and House are working on separate bills right now to potentially, make it more of a crime, not necessarily a felony, but at least a misdemeanor, but or at least in some cases making it a monetary liability to do AI recreations of somebody without their consent. Now, one of these is specifically targeted at revenge porn and stuff like that, where you're using it to harm somebody, so that if you don't have a harm intention, it wouldn't be an issue. But these are still making it through the Senate and the House, so God knows what they're going to be like when they're done. If the Senate or the House can even agree on anything. It's probably still a few years away. But no, there's nothing illegal about what I did. But that being said, I did reach out to Adam Nimoy. The only reason I did not reach out to the children of DeForest Kelley is that he didn't have any children. He and his wife, Carolyn, never had any children or grandchildren, so there is no estate. His rights terminated on the death of his widow, I think in 2015. And as far as Adam Nimoy, he put me in touch with the estate lawyers, and the estate lawyers basically said, and Adam wished me luck. I mean, he thought this was a cool idea. And the estate attorneys basically said, look, we're not going to stop you from doing this. We're just not going to spend money on trying to create some kind of contract to give you permission for it, because the estate isn't really going to pay us for the time. They didn't come right out and say this. They basically said, we're not going to deal with this. But a lawyer friend of mine basically just said, yeah, they're not going to. It's going to cost them $2,000 or $3,000 to give you official permission for this, and nobody's covering that. So, they're like, just, we're not going to stop you. Enjoy, make a nice fan film. Thank you for contacting us. That was basically it. So, always good there.
But yeah, so, but with the slice of life, I mean, those are the things. And honestly, I would love to see more stuff like that, even if it's in animated form. I mean, we did kind of get some of that with the short treks, but not really with CBS. I wish that CBS would kind of venture into a little bit more of this, because there are little questions, and stuff like that we always do have. And you answered one. How did Spock and McCoy first deal with Kirk's passing? It's always something that you think about, when after you're watching Star Trek Generations. Yeah, Chekhov and Scotty were there, but it's like, what about Bones and Spock? So, the good slice of life stuff is always appreciated by fans. Now, is it going to be big money? Like I'm talking for CBS, is it going to be big money? No, it really won't. But actual fans of a franchise or a product will always appreciate little slice of life things that really enrich the core canon. That there's no reason for me to think this, so for me, this conversation is headcanon for me. It is, because there's nothing contradicting the fact that this conversation happened. You know what I mean? There is nothing to tell me, well, in the actual canon, there's nothing to tell me this conversation didn't happen. So I appreciate this, because this made it feel like it enriched the canon. That's kind of like Axanar. It's kind of like there's not really too much in Axanar that makes me feel like that is not canon to Star Trek. You know what I mean? Like the actual Star Trek. I mean, so I consider that headcanon. And I know it's headcanon, and somebody could probably pick out a little thing, but it's almost like the books.
somebody can say, oh, well, Kirk did come back in the books, he blah, blah, blah. And I don't really consider the books canon because I don't read them. But I'm not saying that is not in their canon. That is not their, their mindset of what Star Trek canon is. I'm not going to sit there and argue with them about that.
One of the things that I snuck into the script, I didn't sneak it in the script, I put it in the script on purpose, was the line about Scotty not believing that Kirk is really dead, that, they've all come back to life, and, maybe it's Kirk's turn next. And he fully expects Kirk to come back from some alternate dimension and be alive again. And the reason I put that in there, and a lot of comments that I've been getting have noticed this, is because in the episode Relics for TNG, which was obviously made 2 years before they made, Generations, before Generations was even written, Scotty materializes on the transporter, discovers that it's the Enterprise, and he says, I just knew Jim Kirk was going to get the Enterprise out of mothballs and rescue me. And how is it that Scotty thought that Kirk was still alive when he was there when Kirk died? And so this little throwaway line, quote unquote throwaway line, Scotty doesn't think he's really dead, was to basically say, yeah, well, that's why, Scotty's probably, to his dying day, just still expecting Kirk to walk back, from another reality. And it turns out, by the way, ironically, Scotty was right. But anyways, it's so many people in the comments, have pointed to that and said, thank you for correcting this little piece of canon for me. As far as I'm concerned, that really happened. And,
and
go ahead.
Just some food for thought. I would love to see maybe the TOS crew at Kirk's wake, and we see different members of the crew all mingling and talking to each other. Maybe Harrison's there as well, Sulu's daughter, and just getting everyone's different perspectives of it, hearing all of them how they feel about it and stuff like that. That would be a nice continuation if you ever thought of doing something.
That's one of the comments, Sam, that I get most often in the comments. There's been like 1,000 comments at this point, and I respond to every one of them. But one of the most frequent ones is, I'd love to see the wake, and I respond with the following. First of all, no, you wouldn't. It really would be kind of boring when all was said and done, of just seeing a whole bunch of people, munching on hors d'oeuvres and looking out at Napa Valley and talking about Kirk. And but the other two reasons that this won't happen, one of those reasons is that, first of all, this alone was a year of my life and a year of my illustrator's life. By the way, shout out to Matt Slade.
That was going to be my next question, is about the animator and the illustrator.
We'll get to him. Yeah. But so this was a year of both mine and his life, and that's probably not going to happen. But in addition to that, there are certain people who would be in that are still alive, like George Takei and Walter Koenig. And while the California law says that there's an exemption for film for deceased people, there's no exemption for people who are living. And I obviously can't, because of the guidelines, I can't go to Walter Koenig and use his voice. I could try to have somebody impersonate Chekhov, and I could try to have somebody impersonate Sulu, and but then it would be like I'd have to recreate Grace Lee Whitney's voice, and I'd have and obviously Robin Curtis is still alive, and by the time I got everybody together, there'd be a whole bunch of people who I couldn't use, and like I said, my poor illustrator would be would would go nuts. I was demanding enough on this one, and the reason, by the way, that I could do this is because I was able to give him visual reference from the animated series. I actually had screen caps from Trek Core, and I would take screen caps and I did a storyboard of them. So it was all like Spock and McCoy in those same poses, but they were in their TOS uniforms, and they had like other, backgrounds and whatever behind them or whatever. But this is the pose of McCoy. You have to copy and add in extra wrinkles, and this is the Spock, and you have to put him in a different outfit. And the thing is, I don't have Savick, and I don't have Riley, and I don't have Rand. I mean, and if they weren't in TOS, there's nothing in TNG for them. I mean, I didn't even have Chekhov potentially. In fact, that Chekhov image that you saw in the fan film, I actually ended up drawing that over the thing that Matt drew, because he just couldn't get Chekhov right. He tried. I mean, Matt's an amazing artist. I'm not. But I basically said, okay, I'll try to fix this. And I went in and I just took what he did and I just kind of drew over certain things. And it still doesn't look perfectly like Chekhov. He's a hard face to get, but without a TAS Chekhov, we'd have nothing to go from. So I'm sorry, Zam. We
That's fine. It's just fine. Wishful thinking. I knew something like that was more than unlikely, considering the effort you had to put in just to do this particular fan film with only 3 characters on our screen. I will have to say though, when you're talking about like the voice work, it is remarkable having AI act in a particular way, sound in a particular way, to generate those tones, to make it feel authentically like McCoy and Spock. It was brilliant. It blew me away. If you told me there were voice actors, I would have believed you. And the fact that it was AI and get a performance like that, and I know you obviously did a ton of takes. Still,
ton of takes, a ton of audio manipulation. Yeah. I added pauses, I subtracted pauses, I made things a little faster, a little slower here and there. There was a lot. Yeah, it basically was not a case of, okay, AI is done, I'll just plug it in.
But this was your first time using this sort of AI, yeah? So you were kind of like learning as you were doing it. I'm sure if you were more seasoned, it would have been a lot easier for you. So, but still credit for what you did.
Well, they've also changed and improved the algorithm. And like, for example, there's 3 slider bars. When I was using it, there were only 2. So,
okay.
And in fact, I actually went and redid a number of things at about the 8-month mark, because the original version of it had things like, I wish I could get this a little bit better. And like, when I went back and discovered that they had improved certain things, like, I can get a better reading on this line. But what was interesting is that there were a couple of lines where it didn't. Like, whatever they did screwed it up, because there were like some lines that were so good the first time that even though I really wanted to redo them because they were a little scratchy or whatever, it did not come close to giving me the cadence and the emotionalism of that particular take. And by the way, sometimes the takes were surprisingly good. Like, I knew what I wanted. Most of the time when there was a take, I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. It's like, I was thinking as the director, it's like, okay, this is the take I wanted. This sounds like what I wanted. This is the one. And there were a couple of times where I got a take, it's like, wow, that was a very interesting choice the algorithm made. And I kind of like it. And I would never have thought of delivering the line that way. And like, that actually works. So, every so often the AI even surprised me with what he was capable of. I mean, it's unbelievable what technology can do. And as long as the robots don't take over and make us their slaves, I think we're okay.
So many memorable moments in film happen by accident at times, and they keep that cut because it just looks so bloody good. So yeah, that's lucky that happened to you. I'm glad that you had that turn of fortune.
I'll tell you one more quick thing before we transition into the animation. We're speaking about the comments I get most frequently. This is not a frequent comment, but it's a comment I've gotten. Like 10 or 12 people have all said to me some form of, wow, you hired really good actors. And one guy got really angry at me for not crediting the voice actors. You're like, what? Where are the names of the voice actors in your credits? I was like, did you read the fact that said AI voices generated by 11 Labs? He was really incensed that I didn't credit the actors. Like, but anytime somebody says, you hired some really good actors, I just I will extend your compliments to the algorithms.
Go to the code to find the guy who did the code and shake his hand.
Exactly.
However, have you gotten any comments about, well, now that you're using AI for this, now you're taking work away from like voice actors? Like, I'm sure there's some people out there who are very anti-AI, and although I'm not very anti-AI, but there are a lot of people who are pretty radical about it, and so I just didn't know if you had any kickback from any of those people.
Not only did I have kickback from them, I mean, a couple of people. Obviously, the folks in Aximonitor were particularly harsh on me.
We don't want to make them mad.
But they're harsh every day I wake up and get out of bed. So
Yeah.
but no, I mean, most people have been very complimentary. I mean, almost every comment I'm getting has been very positive on this. I mean, Josh Irwin, who does the Avalon Universe films, always gets like, maybe 10 or 20% of the stuff is criticizing you didn't do the lighting right, you didn't do this right. And like, I like 99% of everything that's coming in is like, I really love this. This is great. You did a great job. And it's like, I'm so happy. Like, yeah, so Josh, nobody's really complaining. Said the person who says you really have to put the credits in who did your voices. In fact, the only real consistent complaint I get, or not really complaint, but just like, you made a boo-boo, is when McCoy says that it was 12 years ago that Sulu got the Excelsior. And I completely screwed that up. It would have been about 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 years. Not 12 years. And I just responded to those people like, yeah, I put that in there so that everybody would have the same thing to complain about. So that,
I want to add that you also, McCoy said to Spock, he was the closest thing you had to a brother.
Well, people say that as well.
yeah.
But here's the thing: Cybok was a half brother that Spock barely knew. He was closer to Michael.
No, I agree, but I'm just, I just thought that was a bit funny. Regardless, if people want to get, all technical about things,
No, I've gotten a few responses that said, yeah, Spock had a brother. It's like, no, he had a half brother, and they weren't really close. And Kirk was closer to Spock than a brother. In fact, Kirk even said at one point, I lost a brother once, but then I got him back. And I'm thinking, you never got George Samuel Kirk back. And like, oh, you're talking about Spock. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that's just between Spock and Kirk. I mean, that's what it is. Their brothers are just lost.
Yeah.
Although I have to admit, Strange New Worlds has done a good job with Sam Kirk. I like Sam Kirk on Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, it was surprisingly good. And Paul Wesley, actually, I actually don't mind him as a Kirk.
I just want to add, like him. Add regarding the AI and stuff like that. I look at AI as like maybe people using a synthesizer to create like an orchestral band when it comes to making music and creating sound effects. I still feel that movie studios will still use real people to create voice work, because it just will always sound more authentic, the same way they use orchestras and bands to create musical scores, which what like John Williams has done and many other people have done. But it will always sound more authentic than creating an orchestra off a keyboard. But for people like us who don't have that budget and don't have all those people to help us, then this sort of stuff is really useful. And so there's nothing wrong in that, in my opinion. I mean, you're just a small fandom creator. You're not Warner Brothers. You're not taking work away from anybody, in my opinion.
Well, and
according to the guidelines, he can't pay anybody.
Yeah, well,
exactly too. Yeah.
And that was the thing, to answer your unanswered question. So yes, I actually have gotten blowback from people, including the first musician that I approached to do the music composition, because I didn't want to use the exact opening from Star Trek Generations. I wanted to get a version of that was close. And I didn't want to use the TAS, fanfare at the end, but I wanted it to be the same music. So I went to a person who's done a number of fan film scores, and I told him about this, and he was very polite to me, but he said, I don't feel comfortable supporting something that is taking work away from creatives. He didn't say specifically actors, but he said, just creatives, because he's a musician. He's got the same problem with AI that the actors have, and writers and illustrators. Amusingly, my illustrator, by the way, got work out of this because he wouldn't have had illustration, and there's no way that AI could do this, the animation that I needed. But anyway, I respected the musician who said, I don't want to work on something that is AI supported. And I was fine with that. I found another musician. I found Matt Milne out of Scotland, and he did a nice bunch of music for me. But as I said in the blog, first of all, I'm not taking paying work away from actors. I can't pay anybody to be part of my fan film. Even my illustrator is basically just getting a wonderful thing to show as part of his portfolio. But if you have a chance to hire Matt Slade, please do. He's awesome. He's incredibly professional. He's really, really good. If you need to contact him, contact me. I'll tell you how to get a hold of him. But he lives in Louisiana, and he's just amazing. But as far as actors, yeah, nobody was ever going to get paid for this. But honestly, I needed somebody who sounded like Spock, and I needed somebody who sounded like McCoy. And the people who could really do a decent job of that would probably not want to work for free. And they probably wouldn't have wanted to do the amount of retakes. I mean, they probably wouldn't need 130 takes, but I would certainly have wanted to direct them in certain ways with this. But but the whole thing is I had this on my hard drive for 14 years before I did anything with it. 13 years, I guess. If I'd wanted to use actors, I could have used them at any time. I didn't. And it was only when I discovered AI that I thought to myself, I want to see how this works. So the whole reason I made this fan film wasn't to make the fan film, but rather to make the fan film so I could talk about making the fan film in a series of blogs. And that's the whole reason I made Interlude. I didn't make Interlude as an Axanar fan film. I mean, I love Axanar, and I definitely enjoyed making an Axanar fan film. But no, I wanted to write a whole blog series on how to make a fan film, from the original conception of it to the crowdfunding to the budgeting to pre-production, production, post-production. I got 62 blogs out of Interlude. I'm a blogger. That's what I do.
Well, it was a phenomenal fan film for a blog, for somebody who just says it's a second hat, so to speak.
Yeah. I got a lot of hats.
So is there anything else about the animation process that you wanted to talk about? I find it interesting how you met Mr. Slade. You said in your blog that you met him through somebody that's a friend of our channel.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's just establish right now that nothing happens in the world of fan films that cannot be traced back in some way, shape, or form to Vance Major.
No.
Nope.
I told my wife today that you could he's the fan film version of Kevin Bacon, and we need to come up with like the game 7 Degrees of Vance Major.
Listen, we're just gonna have a big whiteboard, and it's just gonna have Vance Major in the middle, and then it's gonna have a bunch of bubble like lines going.
Spider webs coming out of Vance and the
pins.
It's gonna be like what was it from Parks and Rec or whatever? He was like, he's got the whiteboard there. He's like, look, Vance Major is the center of it all.
It's kind of funny. It used to all be my fault. And what I mean by that is, back in college in the 1980s, I went to Cornell, and I brought Starfleet, the fan club, to Cornell University. And because of me, a chapter of Starfleet was created that ended up being very, very active in that entire region of the Northeast. And so, every year they would have the Watkins Glen annual gathering, where everybody would go to Watkins Glen State Park, and they'd hike up the gorges, and they'd do stuff, and they'd go Purity ice cream afterwards, and everything that they did was traceable back to John Lane. And so there are people still living in Ithaca, New York, and it's like 35, 40 years later, who will say it's all John's fault. So for me, there are people you can go up to, in the world and say, whose fault is it? And they say it's John Lane's fault. So that was me up until Vance, and now it's all Vance's fault. So I'm handing off the baton to him. He has the honor of it's all Vance's fault. So how is me finding Matt Slade Vance's fault? Well, he ended up with a Constar Chronicles comic book. There was only one issue ever drawn, but it was, I think 8 pages or whatever, and had the Constar characters in it. And I wanted to interview his artist. It's not a fan film, but it's fan film adjacent. I thought it'd be interesting. And so I got Matt's contact information. I reached out to him, and I still haven't interviewed him, by the way. That's, on my list of things to do before I die. But I was chatting with him because at this point I was thinking about doing an animated version of this. I had just realized I need to turn this audio drama into an animated film, and I had I don't know how to draw, and I said, could you draw stuff in like the TAS style? And he said, well, if I could trace over it, I suppose. And I told him about the project, and he said, yeah, well, this kind of sounds cool. Let's give it a shot. And so we started working on it. And what I did on my end was I looked up, and you can find everything on the internet, of course. So I looked up how to generate lip sync for dialogue. And there was this great, you can find the video. I linked to it in the second part of the blog. But it basically explained how there's only like really 9 mouth positions that can generate pretty much any letter that you're talking about. For example, E, eh, E, eh. It's both this way. N, all the same. M, m, b, p, m. That's all the same. The ooh, o, well, not o, but ah, somebody's just going to take me making these noises and put it into a video. R, all has the same mouth movements. S, sh, sk, all has the same teeth together. So pretty much anything that was that was these certain consonants would be one of these 9 mouth movements. And so he drew me for every cell, for every character in every position, he drew me the 9 mouth movements. And then I would just go in frame by frame. And it's like, okay, this is the letter T. Well, T is just a closed mouth. Or this is a th and l. It's a th or it's an l. I always want to get the thl one. If it's an ah or I, that was the wide open mouth vowel. If it was the e, n, I used the smaller one, and just keep swapping these out frame after frame after frame, matching them. And it's kind of difficult to do a word like that, because like a word like Spock, which is just one syllable, is s, p, a, and k. So 4 different mouth movements for Spock. Doctor is d, a, k, t, So doctor is 5. So you put I don't even want to talk about the word appropriate. I mean, that was like 11. And it was just a year of my life going in. I wasn't going to make Matt do this. He was already doing enough crapping on his own. So I was going in and I was putting this stuff together, and it would take me hours sometimes to just do like, 2 or 3 lines of dialogue. And I get to a point where like, oh man, I've been doing this for like 15 minutes and my eyes are starting to blur. Like, okay, let's see how this looks. And I would just sort of play what was maybe like 5 or 6 seconds for the last 15 minutes of my life putting stuff in. And I would be watching the lips move like, holy shit, that looks like McCoy is actually saying that stuff. I'm like, and that kept me going. That gave me like the next 15 minutes to get the next 5 or 10 seconds. And it was just like, holy crap, this actually works. I didn't think it was going to work. And every time I did it, it worked. I mean, sometimes I had to like adjust something a little bit further that way or that way. And, I had a little trial and error, like the word oi. There's no oi. So aw and an E. But, it was crazy. And, the artwork underneath it all was fantastic. Sometimes I would do little adjustments to the stuff he had, and he was fine with that. A lot of illustrators were like, don't touch my stuff, I'll fix it. And and I was a creative director for 12 years, so I understand that there are very touchy art people out there. And Matt was fine with it, and Matt's like, look, I'm working on this, pretty much for peanuts. If you want to fix it, as opposed to having me try to fix it, and you say, no, that's not it, and I try to fix it again, you go, no, that's not it either, and that's not it either, and I'm doing it 6 or 7 different times, and it's not right. It's like, if you know the way you want it, go ahead. So we worked very synergistically together, and it was a total joy working with him. As I said, as a creative director, I've worked with a lot of artists, and I literally, I don't think I've ever enjoyed working with an artist more than I enjoyed working with Matt.
I'm just fascinated listening to you regarding the expressions the word has to, when the animated character has to give to deliver that word. I was just thinking, I'm not sure why you don't do it like you're dubbing a foreign movie where you have no choice but to speak over them regardless of how their mouth is. But fair play, that's dedication. That really is.
Well, I think what they're doing now with AI is because AI can now match mouth movements to what it's hearing. So there's now dubbing that's going on in films, and I've seen this, where they dub it from Japanese into English or into German or whatever, and then the AI proceeds to make the mouth move with the German words or with the Italian words or with the Spanish words or whatever to match the dubbed, and that's amazing. That's another thing that like AI, people who hate AI have to at least acknowledge that it's not all completely evil. There is some good stuff in it as well. It's just unfortunately the good is coming with the bad, and it's coming.
Well, that's like social media. I mean, like every advancement and every major advancement in technology always comes with a good and a bad. Cell phones, people live on their cell phones nowadays, but like smartphones, there's always the bad, like social media, like online toxicity, But then the way I use Facebook is like I use it to communication and share funny memes. I never use it to argue with people or, tear people down, except for Zam, maybe, if he, gets on my nerves or something. No, I'm kidding.
He deserves it.
But it's all in the way you use it. But I get it. Like, yeah, every form of technology comes with the good and the bad, and every major one. But like that's the name of the game. I just hope one day that the human race will get their heads out of their rear ends and be like, wow, maybe we should use all these technological advancements for good, not to like tear everybody else down.
You're putting a lot of faith in it.
I know. No, I'm not putting that faith. That's what I'm saying. I kind of hope, but I don't think it's going to happen. I just want to read this comment really quick. I know I put it up earlier, but it's very true. Daniel Vance says Vance Major is the free spot in the middle of the Star Trek bingo card. I'm going to add that next time because I always call him the Stanley of fan films. I'm going to add that to his intro, like the Stanley of fan films, the free spot on every Star Trek bingo card.
Center of the bingo card. He is.
Actually, this other comment from Daniel also was quite touching. When I watched this one at the premiere, I couldn't help but think of
late
Steve Atwell. I found myself sitting in reflective watching it. Any fan film that elicits emotion is a win in my book. Yeah, but rest in peace, Steve, and I'm glad you could keep us reminding of him, Daniel.
Yeah, he was a good guy.
Well, interestingly enough, during my production of this fan film, my father passed away last December, and I celebrated his life, and that was the thing. Are you sad that your father's passed away? Well, I'm a little sad, but the fact is, he lived to be 91.
Yeah, it's a good life.
It's a major blessing. I never had a single problem with my dad. We were never estranged. He loved and supported everything that both of his sons did. He was a great provider for the family and a wonderful role model. And he saw no complaints. And I had him for all 57 years of my life. So, what I realized is, as upset as McCoy is at the beginning of this, and as emotional as Spock is not allowing himself to be, what really needed to happen in this conversation wasn't all about Kirk. I mean, if you notice this conversation that the two of them have, there's some stuff about Kirk, obviously, but it's not all about Kirk. There's all of this just kind of, common stuff, general stuff, we're friends, we've shared the same experiences. And what I realized is that was kind of the way I was talking to my brother and my mom about my dad, is we'd start talking about dad, and then, we would just, stop reminiscing and being sad or whatever, and we would just, connect over other things. And it was very interesting to see this conversation that I wrote, pretty much 13 years before my father passed away, being that same kind of, healing conversation. McCoy had to get past his anger. People were saying McCoy would never be this angry with Spock. He was that way back in TOS, but by the time the movies, he's not that way anymore. And I explained to people, I said, look, he's angry, and Spock is there as a punching bag, and McCoy punches it. And I think Spock knew that McCoy needed him in the same way that Spock needs McCoy. He needs somebody who is feeling, because Spock can't allow himself to feel. And it's like the last person that either one of them wants to see, but the person that each one of them really needs the most. And McCoy doesn't have to go through the agony of it all again. I mean, there's only one moment in the entire thing where, he almost starts to cry when he says, an absent friend, but he recovers from it. And it's okay. He's always going to feel that loss. I think even when he was in TNG, going on to the Enterprise, there's probably part of him that was just thinking, man, I so miss Jim. I wish he'd lived long enough to see this ship. It never goes away. You never stop missing somebody that you've lost, but you just learn to go on. And I think that was the whole idea of this, that it was such a ultimately casual conversation between the two of them. And of course, at the end, what I also threw in there along with the Scotty thing was McCoy's the reason that Spock becomes a Maverick in Unification in TNG. Why is he practicing cowboy diplomacy? Because, well, McCoy put that idea in his head. How about that for headcanon?
Hey, I mean, as I said, it makes a lot, the cowboy diplomacy, that's I caught that. So I mean, that was a great little addition. And as I said, I don't think there's anything that really deters that from being canon if somebody wants it to be canon. You know what I mean? Like, so.
And if they don't want it to be canon, it's okay. You've got 650 hours of film Star Trek to watch. So, enjoy.
Yep.
That's the thing about all the fan films. I mean, there's so many fan films, and some of the fan films are headcanon for me, and some I'm like, yeah, this didn't happen. But I watch them anyway. They're fun, and it's nice to see fans, playing in the sandbox as much as CBS and Paramount allow us to, and feel grateful for that. That they haven't said, sorry, you guys can't do this at all. This is our IP, and this is verboten. No, they're letting us do it. They're just saying, okay, you can't do this, or this.
Yeah.
Everything else is okay. And honestly, there's a lot that's okay. And most of the time, they're looking the other way. Anybody says that the guidelines killed Star Trek fan films has not been paying attention.
Yeah, no, I think that the Star Trek fan films are actually like prospering more than ever before.
Absolutely.
And I mean, and good for the fan film creators to want to work inside the boundaries. They're not just trying to get away with it. They're like, look, we're going to make our love letter to Star Trek, and we're going to try to work around it. Just a really quick question I wanted to ask. I know we're going to start wrapping here probably in the next 10 minutes or so, but if with the doors were wide open, what would you do with another slice of life fan film like this? Like, have you thought about it, or not even at all? Do you have anything in the bank that maybe you might make it into an audio drama, or no? Okay.
No, not really. My next fan film, if it gets made, if I can find like about $35,000 from some very nice rich donor, is going to be an Avalon Universe alternate reality fan film that's a Star Trek musical.
Oh.
And by the way, I wrote this before Subspace Rhapsody came out, so I was the first one to come up with the musical idea.
I think is it Josh Irwin or Tyler Donovan who always says that, like, CBS is watching fan films. So they probably got eyeballs on your hard drives, and they're like, this guy wrote this musical here, like, before, a long time ago. Maybe we should try to do a musical number on Strange New Worlds.
The only person who knew I wrote the musical was Josh, and a couple other people I shared the script with. What's fun is that the musical numbers are all parody songs from the 1950s and 60s that would have been on the radio when Shatner and Nimoy and the rest of them were all driving to Paramount for the filming of the original Star Trek. So it's not original music. It's basically songs like, you know, from the Beach Boys and Petula Clark and the Beatles, and of course Elvis, because we now know that in the Avalon universe there's a Flower Children universe where there's Flower Blossom Allenby of the Excalibur and her first officer Presley, you know, who is, you know, total Elvis guy.
Burning Love.
Exactly. So, you know, Tyler has to come back and play Presley again, and we're just really hoping we could talk out.
The new Mirror universe is now going to be that flower child universe. Now it's like the Mirror universe. Nah, we're good. We want the Flower Child universe now. That's their Mirror universe.
Well, the fun part about this particular story is that it actually is a sequel in the Flower universe to The Way to Eden. Eden has also been discovered in the Flower Children universe, and it's the same thing. It's a poisoned planet, but we discover who poisoned it and why.
Oh,
and the mission is to save the Forbidden Planet, which is coincidentally the title.
I'd watch that.
Yeah,
I have an idea for a slice of life episode.
Okay,
it'll be Enterprise versus Voyager, with some of the DS9 guys who are on Enterprise going back to Enterprise to represent them, and the rest of them playing for Voyager, and they have a baseball match against each other.
It sounds like a Dragon Ball episode.
I would love to see something like that, or even just a handful of different characters from all the series just sitting around the table and playing a game of poker and busting each other's balls and all of that. You know, just
Captain Stable.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. But I wouldn't necessarily just want it to be all the captains. Maybe just some of all these different characters. Obviously, I would like Riker to be there, but you know, maybe like I've always thought Riker and Chakotay were quite similar, so because they clash there as well, of personalities. It would be nice to see them, you know, going up against each other. Just things like that, you know. I would love to see more crossover, basically.
I would love to see Torres and Scotty at the same table. That would be a conversation.
Or even more like, for instance, when Scotty came back through that, whatever it was called, you know, I would love to see him meet up with Bones, who's obviously really old, and you know, maybe see Spock again, something like that. You know, after all this time, that would be nice as well, just to catch up with them after all these years.
That would be interesting. Now, before anybody says, Jonathan, why don't you make that? They're both dead actors. I do not think AI has the ability at this point to do a fake Scottish accent. I think it can do a real Scottish accent, but I don't think it can do the kind of accent that Jimmy Doohan was doing.
Actually, a lot of Scottish people, you know, have said that, like, all of us were fooled. Like, I never even really realized that, and I'm an American, but you know, like, I was never really even realized it wasn't a Scottish accent. But in my elder years now, I've come across a lot of Scotsmen, and you know, a lot of them have said that they all love it. They all love Scotty's Scottish accent, but they're just like, but it's not Scottish.
Well, it's like Irish people are gonna like, we don't all talk like leprechauns, you know.
Yeah, right.
What about Walter's Russian accent? Is it how authentic is that?
Actually, interestingly enough, Walter Koenig's father was Russian, and so when he says that's not a real Russian accent, he's like, look, I'm doing my father. So
yeah, I was about to say, I knew he had some kind of Russian heritage in him. Like, it wasn't like he wasn't born in Russia, but
no, but his father was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I copy my parents' Indian accent all the time. I talk like this, no problem at all, my friends.
Yeah, when you hear it enough.
Well, Indian accent's pretty easy to do because the only thing you have to do is just not move your upper lip when you talk. If you don't move your upper lip, you can talk like an Indian very easily.
Okay.
Now you have to pay attention to it. Now you're going to notice whenever you do your Indian accent, your upper lip's not moving. Anyway, all right, guys. Did you want to wrap it up? We've been here for like what, 16 hours so far?
14. But
time flies when you're having fun. No, I want to thank you for joining us, Mr. Lane. If you haven't before, please go check out the channel Jonathan Lane, the original release of an absent friend. Give it a like, a comment with your own thoughts about the film. Let us know any questions that you thought that we missed here in our comments here on NerdTube. Do you have
Also-
anything?
Oh, I was going to say also the link to the fan film is down below in the description. So if you,
Excellent.
as well as in the chat over here. Well, I don't know where I think it's down here for people. I don't know where it is on phones and YouTube and everything. I also put the link to Fan Film Factor. I will be adding that to the description after we wrap up here, so it should be there once we get done.
Help me get over 50,000 views. I want to blog about it.
Help them.
If I reach 50,000 views, I got a blog written.
Make it happen.
Make it.
Yeah, I found film like this.
5,000.
There's hundreds of thousands of views. It really does. It needs it. Like people within the Star Trek universe or fans, that is, they need to see this. And there's millions of fans, hundreds of thousands of them. We need to get a hold of this right now. It needs to be seen.
Tell your friends.
Agreed.
Tell your enemies.
Yeah,
Tell your frenemies.
Sign your parents up for YouTube.
Oh no.
Oh,
Tell your
now.
parents, who are probably fans of the original series at this point.
So anything else to add, Cheeto or Zam?
No, I want to thank Jonathan for being here. I mean, very much. We appreciate you coming on and chatting with us. We appreciate you letting us review your fan film on here and just kind of chatting with you about it. It was a wonderful fan film. And I'm very glad that you decided to do it. As I said, these slice of life things are just always a pleasure and a gem that need more attention, So hopefully we can help garner some of that attention.
I would certainly agree. Anyway, guys, thank you for everything you do as well. I'm very happy that I'm not the only person covering Star Trek fan films out here. Me and you guys and Jefferson Kelly and a few others. But anyway, keep supporting Star Trek fan films because we fans, we are doing it for you. I mean, kind of doing it for us as well because
a little bit for ourselves too.
It's fun,
but
for everyone.
But we're really doing it for you.
No, thank you to the audience. Thank you for joining us in chat this evening. But yeah, let us know any questions that we might have missed in the comments below if you catch us on the VOD. Thanks again to Mr. Lane for joining us. Thank you to my co-host, Cousin Cheeto and Zam.
Thank you.
You've been watching NerdTube. Remember it.